Hi, this is Joe Bolen, and today we're going to continue to examine the three decision-making options that we have within Visual Basic. We have already looked at the if-then statement, and we've looked at the if-then-else statement. Today we're going to look at the select case statement and how to use it in our programming to control flow of our program logic. So let's take a look at the select case syntax to see how it's done. So I have on my screen making a case. Here comes the judge. Back in 1970, there was a American show called Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In which they had a skit called Here Comes the Judge. And this made me think of this because we need to make a good case, select case in this version, to examine the flow of our logic in our code. So let's take a look at that. As I've said before, there are three controlling statements that we can use in Visual Basic. The single selection, the if-then, and then the double selection, the if-then-else, and now we're looking at the multiple selection, the select case. Now all these statements require that we evaluate some kind of condition or expression to determine if it's true or false. Based off of whether it's true or false, then we'll make the decision of how we will branch our code to do different things. The select case is very nice because not only does it have all the features of the single selection and double selection, it also allows us to have multiple selections and ranges as well for a selection in one series of statements. Here's the actual syntax for the select case statement, and it begins with select case, and then we have something we're going to have as an expression that we're going to use to check and evaluate against. The next following it is the case keyword with either a value or an expression list, and this is a little bit different than just an if-then-else. We actually can have more than one kind of statement being evaluated to see if in fact we get a true situation between whatever we put in this line of the case statement against the expression that we're evaluating against. If it turns out that we do have a true evaluation between the expression and the case statement line, then we're going to execute the statements that follow the case statement. And it could be one or many statements that are being executed at this point. After that is finished executing, then we jump down to the end select. We do not go any further with the evaluations. We've satisfied our condition and we're jumping to the end select and continuing on in our statements. If we add more than one case statement, then we're looking at evaluating it as well if this one is not true, and then we're going to execute the statements following it if it turns out this condition is true. Now we can have an optional case else statement, and this condition will operate no matter what. If we fail any of the above preceding case statements to evaluate true, we will definitely run whatever statements we have with the case else. Now we do not need to have a case else statement in our code, but it's a catch-all in case we want to take action on a condition that does not satisfy any of the above case statements. Remember, though, that we also have the relational and equality operators that we can use in that evaluation, just like the if-then and the if-then-else, or else-if. We have the greater than symbol, the less than, greater than and equal, less than and equal, equal, or not equal on that. Let's take a look at an actual usage here of a case syntax block of code. And we're using especially the keyword is in this one. Here we have a personal identification number. And we're basically saying in the first case statement, if the personal identification number is less than 1,000, then we're going to assign the literal assistance requested to the variable message. So the is keyword is another way of saying pin less than 1000 on that. So we need to use the keyword. In this case, we don't repeat the pin variable, but we use the is keyword. Now we see the next statement below. If it was greater than 1000, we see that there are other conditions that occur. We can check for an individual value. So we see 1001, 1002, or we can even check for a range by using the to keyword for our range of values. So it could be 1015 to and including 1030 to assign the administrator's literal to the message variable. Now once again, we see a range situation with the third case statement. And in this case, I should say in this example, we see the case else statement that if it does not match any of the above case statements evaluating true, then we're going to execute the case else statement, and we're going to assign the string literal associates to the variable message, and then proceed to the end select and the statements following that. So let's take a look at this in our actual code in Visual Basic. So I've created a sample select case demo project, and I've coded a group box with the title color to the group box, and then I've put in it the 5 different radio buttons representing colors that one can select as they run this program. Then I have a label that I've defined, not a text box, but a label. And I've initialized the phrase "you pick a color" to tell the user to pick a color over here to the side. And as they pick a color, then the information in the text box will change and represent the color. Let's take a look at the code behind this. Here we come in and we have our main form with our procedure called radio button. And in this case, it's going to handle the check change event for all the different radio buttons that we've defined on that. And you'll see that we have the 5 different radio buttons defined with the check change event being assigned to the radio button check change event. Then we declare a color picked as string in this particular case, and this is a little bit different. Instead of putting a variable here, we're going to put a literal, in this case the Boolean true value, and we're going to examine this true value against the different radio buttons. Now what's interesting to remember is that a radio button can only have a checked or unchecked status. All the others are going to have unchecked if black is checked. If blue is checked, all the others are unchecked. So we can look at the Boolean value of the check statement to see which one has been picked. And so as I come down here, I'll look at each radio button to see if this evaluates to true. If it evaluates to true, then I pick black. If blue's been picked and it's checked, then it evaluates to blue. So as we comes down through the select case statement, we have a nice clean way to determine which radio button has been picked. A lot nicer than we could do with an if, else, or else if type statement. As we come down and we've assigned to our variable color picked a value, then we can then exit out of the in select and assign that color to the for color for our label, and then also concatenate a phrase to put into our text property of our label, saying you have picked whatever color we've chosen for your color. So let's see this run. Okay, I have the program up, and right now it's ready for me to pick something. I'll click on the red, and you'll see that it's jumped to red on it. So it's come into the event handler for check change, and then processed down to see that it was red that was picked, and then assign that color and the phrase you picked red for your color. Likewise, green, blue, orange, and I'll go back to black. So we see a nice simple way to use the select case to write a code. Let's go back to our program that we had before. I'm going to close out this solution and open up the former program that I had. Let me go back to the start window on that. So let me view the start window, start page, it should say. And I'm going to bring up the student grade calculator that we've used in the past. And I'm going to go to the code behind it and change our magnification so it's a little easier to read. And here's where we have our else if nested logic on it. I'm going to change this so that you can see this as a case kind of evaluation. So I'm going to quickly highlight all this and comment it out so that it will not be executing, but I can see it there. And then I'm going to put the code down below for this to occur. So I'm going to do a select case, and I'm going to look at score as my variable that I'm going to evaluate, and I'm going to say case, and I'm going to say is greater than or equal to 90. Then I'm going to say grade result label text. I'm going to assign it the A letter grade. Similarly, I'll do that also for the next one. Case is greater than or equal to 80. Grade result label text is going to be assigned the B letter grade. Not the BB, but the B. And then also we'll continue on the logic. And finally we'll come down to the testing for the D. And unfortunately, there's a possibility that we wouldn't get even a D, and therefore I do a case else. And there I go ahead and assign to it an F. So here is our logic if we were to use the case statement for our testing versus the else if nested logic. Very similar, but I think it's easier to read. And as we add more complexity to our decision-making logic, the select case becomes a lot nicer to have in our code. So I highly recommend you use the select case for your code. It makes it easier and prevents over amount of indentation in your code. So let's run this real quickly just to see it work. I'll key into my option, the letter grade, and test for a grade of 85. And it gives me a B, which is our result. As we came down, we would hit that. Let me put it also in break mode so we can see this actually occur in break mode. So I'm going to come over to the far left of the select case score statement, and we'll actually see it go through the logic as we run this. Let me hit start again. This time I'll put in 75, hit submit, and as I hit, I should say letter grades, and then hit 75, you'll see it come down. It's getting ready to execute the first evaluation. So I'm going to step into with an F8, and the first one will be looked at next, and if it was greater than or equal to 90, it'll do the next statement after it, but it's not, so it goes to the next one, jumps down. Now it's ready to look at this one, and in fact it hits this condition correctly, and it's ready now to assign the C to it. So let me go ahead and assign the C to it, and then it jumps down to the end select ready to pop on out of our code. And it will then assign a C to our output. So we see that the select case is a very nice option to use in our code. Learn how to use the if then, use the if then else, and especially learn how to use the select case. And remember, with the select case, we can have multiple values to look at. We can use the is keyword. We can put in literal values to examine. We can use the range by using the to keyword between two values on that. One thing to remember, though, if we are evaluating something that's an alphanumeric, which means it might be a string, you need to either use a to upper or to lower on your value and then make certain the case matches throughout. Otherwise, you have to have an exact match of the phrase that you might use as a string value to whatever you're evaluating against. By using a to upper or to lower method on that, then you can examine just lowercase or just uppercase matches on that. So remember to use the select case, also the if then and the else if and if then else. So we have those three different ways to control the flow of our logic in our code. So get your hands dirty in the code, try out this project, take a look again at the one I did with the radio buttons, because that's an interesting way to look at how to use radio buttons with a select case. Until then, get your hands dirty in the code and take care.